I walked in on my fiancée moaning my name, while riding my goddamn nanny's son. My blood didn't boil. It froze. The sound of skin slapping against skin still echoes behind my eyes. I stood at the door, frozen, keys in my hand, a bottle of champagne meant to celebrate her job promotion, one I pulled strings to get her. But all I saw was betrayal. Naked. Sweaty. Smiling. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. "Derek," she said, catching her breath mid-thrust, "you were supposed to be out till 10. 10. As if there was ever a good time to catch your fiancé screwing someone else, least of all him. Ezra. Nanny Elena's son. The boy I grew up with. The boy I paid for. His private school, his summer camps, even his college tuition, my money." She climbed off him, calmly like she was stepping out of a hot tub. "This isn't what it looks like," she said, running a hand through her sweat-drenched hair. "Really?" I laughed. It came out cracked, like glass under boot. "Because it looks like my fiancé just ked my nanny's bastard son in my house. On my bed." Ezra didn't say a word. He just sat there, smug, silent, like he owned the world. I looked at Sarah. The woman I was going to marry in 3 weeks. My whole life wrapped around hers, our shared accounts, our parents' meeting, the goddamn wedding invitations already sent. And in her eyes? No guilt. Just pity. "I think you always knew," she whispered. "You're a good man, Derek, but Ezra makes me feel." That was the first cut. She twisted the knife when she added, "You don't have to make this messy. You'll bounce back. You always do." She was already dismissing me like a bad stock option. But here's the thing Sarah never learned. I don't bounce. I burn. Sarah Morgan was the type of woman who walked into a room and made you forget who you were talking to. Not because she was loud. Not because she was beautiful, which she was, but because she carried the weight of royalty in her spine. Composure. Precision. A voice smooth enough to seduce Congress and cunning enough to tear empires down with a smirk. When I met her, I was rebuilding after my father's company collapsed under scandal. She was a junior legal associate with eyes like glacier cuts and the ambition of a general. She didn't fall for me instantly. Sarah didn't fall. She strategized. We were power. Together. I had the connections. She had the courtroom ferocity. Together, we built our names from ashes and ambition. I made her a partner in my firm in under 2 years. I gave her equity. A future. I even handed her my passwords. She handed me compliments in front of friends and distance behind closed doors. But I ignored the red flags. Because I was in love. And because I owed her. See, 3 years ago, I almost lost everything. A hostile acquisition attempt, financial audits, whispers of embezzlement. I was drowning in lawsuits and sleepless nights. Sarah stepped in, not as my fiancée, but as my litigator. She buried the case. Buried the witnesses. Buried every trace of weakness. She saved me. Or so I thought. And then there's Ezra. The first time I met him, he was 12, barefoot in the kitchen, eating peanut butter from the jar like an animal. His mother, Elena, had been my nanny growing up. She raised me like I was her own while my real parents lived inside martini glasses and business lounges. Elena was a kind incarnate. Her son. A street rat with a smirk. But I tried. God, did I try. I sent him to prep school with the best. Paid his tuition, his books, his dorm. Got him internships at firms I had to bleed to even be interviewed at. And he thanked me, sort of. Just enough to keep my guilt at bay. He'd call me big bro sometimes, and I'd pretend it didn't sound wrong. I never saw it. The way he looked at Sarah. The lazy charm, the effortless laughter, the way he lingered when she passed in the hallway. I chalked it up to youth. To admiration. I didn't know he was studying me. Learning me. Waiting for the moment I let my guard down. Sarah and I started slipping after we got engaged. Little things. She stopped wearing the ring at the gym. She started working late. She turned her phone face down during dinner. I asked. She lied, well. Smoothly. We're just tired, babe. You've been stressed. You're imagining things. And like an idiot, I believed her. Because Sarah always made her lies sound like lullabies. But there was one more detail. The key, really. A few months before the betrayal, I came across a single email on her MacBook. The screen had been left open while she showered, something she never did. A draft, unsent. Titled, What We Do After. It wasn't addressed to me. I only read a few lines before she returned, and I closed it. I told myself it was a work brief. A venting diary. Anything but what I feared. Now I remember the lines. He still trusts us. All of it still in his name. Once the wedding hits, we move quietly. No war. No chaos. Just precision. We. Her and Ezra. It wasn't just lust. It wasn't just a fling. It was a coup. I gave my life to a woman who plotted to erase me, alongside the boy I treated like a brother. But here's the thing, Sarah forgot one truth about me. I don't forgive. And I will never forget. It was 2 days after the incident, the affair, the collapse, her words, and still, no apology. Not a call. Not a text. Nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't cry. I observed. Because when a man is pushed off a cliff, he doesn't waste time screaming, he memorizes the shape of the rocks on the way down, so he can land with purpose. I dug through everything, emails, bank statements, calendars. I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for infrastructure. And I found it. She had been moving assets. Quietly. Over months. Stocks from our joint portfolio transferred into a shell LLC, SNE Ventures. S for Sarah. E for Ezra. Registered in Delaware, tax-sheltered, and ghost-run by a lawyer who happened to be Sarah's old roommate. They weren't just screwing behind my back. They were dismantling me piece by piece. That wasn't the twist. The twist came at 3:17 a.m., when I cracked into a shared cloud drive Ezra had stupidly left linked to my home Wi-Fi from a previous visit. It auto-synced whenever he entered my house. A folder sat there. Titled, The Breakdown. Inside were videos. Dozens. Security cam footage. Hidden recordings. Conversations I thought were private, me venting about my partners, me in vulnerable moments. Me, drunk, angry, venting about suicide after my father's death. I watched one where I was pacing my office, shirt half unbuttoned, talking to myself like a madman. Ezra's voice cut in off camera. This is the one. Once this leaks, the board will call for a vote. They were building a case. Not just to rob me. To have me declared unstable. To seize legal control of my company. They'd been collecting evidence to paint me as mentally unfit to lead. A psychotic, volatile CEO collapsing under pressure. And Sarah? She fed the script perfectly. Her therapy sessions, paid by me, recorded. Audio logs where she wept, describing her concern for my erratic moods, my insomnia, my self-destructive spirals. I always thought she was just decompressing. But no, she was building a legal narrative. He scares me sometimes, she said in one recording, voice cracking perfectly. I'm afraid of what happens if I leave him. Oscar-worthy. I watched, still and silent, as a full PDF proposal laid out their plan post-wedding. Transfer remaining joint assets to SNE Ventures. Leverage fabricated mental health breakdown to trigger emergency board vote. Replace me with Ezra as interim head, just long enough for a buyout. Disappear with a multi-million-dollar severance. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being erased. Here's where it gets cruel. That same day, Sarah posted a photo. A soft, candlelit shot of her holding a glass of wine. Caption. Healing looks like boundaries and self-worth. Yellow heart. Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments from friends and followers. Proud of you. Your glow-up is unstoppable. You deserve peace. She had already rewritten the story. I wasn't betrayed. I was the abuser. The unstable. The emotionally taxing burden she found the strength to escape from. She was turning the world against me before I even stepped out of the shadows. But I hadn't spoken yet. And when I do, they'll never see the light again. Because here's what Sarah and Ezra didn't realize: you don't stage a coup without checking the basement. I owned more than my company. I owned the data center. The backups. The legal rights to everything they had touched for the last 2 years. She may have drawn the map. But I built the terrain. And I just found the tripwires. They say betrayal feels like a knife in the back. They're wrong. It's not the blade, it's the silence after. The pause where your brain tries to fill the void between what you thought was real and what actually is. I sat there for hours in that silence, sifting through files, watching Sarah and Ezra's plan unfold. Calculated. Heartless. Perfect. Too perfect. Because something didn't add up. If Ezra wanted to replace me at the company, why had he stayed in the shadows? Why let Sarah take center stage in the manipulation? And Sarah, if she had already won the emotional war, why was she still playing defense online? Why the victim narrative? The deeper I looked, the more fractures I saw. And then came the knock. It was Elena. My old nanny. Ezra's mother. Hair thinner now, hands still shaking from years of waitressing and sacrifice, but her voice, same as ever, warm, trembling with fear. I need to talk to you, she said, eyes darting down the hallway like someone was watching. I hadn't seen her in months. Not since I promoted Ezra to a temporary project lead, right before all this began. She stepped inside and closed the door like it was a secret tomb. He's not who you think he is, Mijo, she whispered. Ezra, he's not working with Sarah. He's working against her. I blinked. What? Elena sat down slowly, her voice cracking as she explained. Sarah didn't seduce Ezra. Ezra seduced her. He'd been obsessed with her for years. Quiet. Controlled. Like a chess player watching from behind the board. He used to talk about her in his sleep, she said, eyes wet. He said she was going to make him matter. That she didn't belong with you. That you were a stepping stone. Ezra had started sending her anonymous gifts before she and I even got engaged. Flowers. Perfumes. A first edition of her favorite courtroom thriller, one I thought I'd gifted her. No. That had been him. He'd been crafting this for years. Subtly, skillfully. Every little fight we had, every doubt she whispered to herself. He amplified them. And then, one night, when I was on a business trip, he showed up at our place. Drunk. Desperate. He confessed his love. She slapped him. But then, she didn't tell me. Why? I asked. Elena swallowed hard. Because she liked it. She liked being worshipped. But the complication ran deeper. Elena handed me a burner phone. A cheap, scratched Nokia with only 2 numbers in it. One was hers. The other was a recording. Voicemail. From Ezra. His voice, cold and venomous. She thinks she's in control. Let her. Once she's cut you off, I'll cut her off. She doesn't get a dime. She's just the face. Another voice followed, an unfamiliar male. And what about the board? Once I have the votes, Ezra replied, they'll name me interim CEO. Give it 6 months, I'll tank the stock, buy it back through our dummy accounts. Full control. And the girl? Collateral. She'll be ruined when the SEC comes. Her name's all over the shell company. Not mine. He was setting Sarah up. I was stunned. She thought she was using Ezra. Ezra was weaponizing her. And neither of them knew I knew. That's when something inside me shifted. I wasn't betrayed anymore. I was the puppeteer. And my puppets had no idea the strings were already wrapped around their throats. But there was one more thread. That evening, I met with Carter Wynn, my CFO and college friend. We'd been through hell together. I figured if anyone could help me protect what I still had, it was him. We sat in his office, skyline glowing behind us, 2 fingers of scotch between us. I laid it all out, Sarah, Ezra, the recordings, the shell company, the plan to seize control. He listened. Quietly. Too quietly. When I finished, he stood up, walked to the window, and said something that made my stomach clench. You should have never let her sit in on board meetings, Derek. I froze. What? He turned slowly. Sarah's brilliant. You gave her power. You gave her the codes. You thought she loved you, but she loved your leverage. I stared at him. Are you telling me you knew? He gave a sad smile. I didn't know, at first. But I suspected. And I didn't stop. Why? I demanded. He took a long sip of scotch. Because the board's tired of you. Your name is tied to the scandal from your father's company. Your presence invites scrutiny. Sarah promised a quiet transition. You'd get a payout. Disappear. No PR nightmare. I stepped back. So you're betraying me too? No, he said. I'm preserving the firm. You always told me to do what was best for the company. I am. I should have punched him. Screamed. But I didn't. Because now I know. This wasn't just personal. This was a corporate war. Sarah thought Ezra was her weapon. Ezra thought Sarah was his pawn. Carter thought both were disposable. And me? I had just become invisible to them all. The perfect position for revenge. Revenge isn't rage. It's a ritual. It's the slow sharpening of the knife while your enemies think they're safe. The smile you wear while they dig their own graves, just the way you taught them to. And I had time. They thought I'd broken down. They thought I was done. I vanished from public view. Cancelled meetings. Medical leave, filed with HR. Whispers about instability began circling. Sarah was seen out more, all glowing and reborn. Ezra was playing the dutiful shadow, following just close enough to be noticed, but not close enough to raise alarms. Perfect. While they posed in wine bars and boardrooms, I went underground. The data I had on them wasn't the weapon. It was the bait. I started with Ezra. I leaked one of the recordings, strategically, to a contact at an anonymous investor forum. Just a snippet. Once she's cut him off, I'll cut her off. She's just the face. With no names. But enough corporate jargon to spark curiosity. Within hours, speculation began. Which firm? Which CEO? Who's the woman? I knew Sarah would see it. She followed market chatter like a hawk. And I knew paranoia would set in. Within 2 days, I saw the change. Sarah was colder to Ezra. He called her 14 times one evening. She answered none. I had access to her call logs. She'd begun to doubt him. Next, I reached out to Elena again. She owed me nothing, but she hated what her son had become. She gave me access to a spare key he'd once left at her house. I entered Ezra's apartment while he was with Sarah. Quiet. Surgical. I planted a flash drive inside his safe. Labeled plainly, contract, shadow transfer. Docs. The file contained fake documents, expertly crafted, outlining how Ezra planned to reallocate 100% of company assets under his name once Sarah triggered the board vote. I knew Ezra checked that safe every Thursday before his private meetings. And I knew his ego wouldn't let him not read a file with his name on it. The next day, Sarah showed up at his place. 20 minutes later, she slapped him so hard the sound cracked through the hallway. I didn't have to watch. I already had the building's hallway security feeds on my phone. Let the distrust rot them from within. Next, I needed Sarah's final move. Her biggest weapon, the emergency board vote. She was planning to trigger it the following week using her carefully orchestrated evidence of my mental instability. Paired with my medical leave and Carter Wynn's testimony, it would be airtight. So I let her do it. I made no move. No contact. No interference. She submitted the motion on Thursday. By Friday, it was approved. An emergency board meeting was set for Monday at 10 a.m. Her victory was in sight. She even posted a cryptic Instagram story the night before. The crown always finds the queen. Blackheart crown #rise. What she didn't know was that every document, every recording, every file she'd submitted, had been fed to her by me. The proof of my breakdown. Staged. Orchestrated with AI facial overlays and deepfake voice stressors, my tech team handled it. The therapist's statements. Written by an offshore ghostwriter under a burner company I owned. I had planted the narrative. And she had delivered it to the board herself. Monday, 10 a.m. Boardroom. High rise. All 12 members in attendance. Sarah entered in full power posture. All white blazers. Black heels. Ezra one step behind, like the loyal shadow. Carter stood to chair the meeting. Sarah began. It is with deep sadness that I bring this motion forward. Derek has served us well, but recent behaviors, supported by medical documentation, have raised concern. She went on. Projected recordings. Charts. Claims. Every minute she spoke, I watched from behind the mirrored glass. The room grew tense. Silent. She finished. Carter cleared his throat, about to call the vote. Before we proceed, came a voice from the doorway, I'd like to respond. All eyes turned. Me. Hair clean cut. Eyes clear. Wearing the same navy suit Sarah bought me for my last birthday. I walked in slowly. Measured. I'd like to share something too. I placed a single USB on the table. Carter hesitated. This isn't procedure. Neither was sabotage, I replied calmly. They played the USB. And watched as every layer unraveled. Ezra's voice, she's just the face. Once she triggers the vote, she's gone. Sarah's confession to Ezra, we bleed him out first. Quietly. Then you vanish until the heat dies down. Carter's recorded phone call, he's got too many ghosts attached to his name. We need a clean break. One by one, the faces in the room changed. From confusion. To horror. To anger. Sarah stood, stammering. This has been edited. You can't prove. Actually, I interrupted, every piece of it was authenticated by 3 third-party firms last night. And your shell company, SNE Ventures? I tossed a manila folder on the table. It's registered to an address you signed a lease for. Which means, by law, you own every piece of its financial crimes. Ezra stepped back. I didn't sign that. No, I smiled. But your mother did. She had power of attorney once, didn't she? From your college days? Ezra paled. You forged it. No, I replied, looking him dead in the eyes. She did it herself. To stop you from destroying anyone else. By noon, Sarah had been escorted out. Ezra left in handcuffs 2 days later, wire fraud, corporate theft, conspiracy. Carter resigned quietly, saving himself a public crucifixion. And me? I returned. Unanimously reinstated. Apologies flowing like cheap champagne. But I didn't celebrate. Because revenge isn't a party. It's an erasure. 3 weeks later, Sarah texted me. You win. Are you happy now? I didn't reply. Instead, I posted one photo on social media. Just a fireplace. No caption. People guessed it meant peace. Healing. Only she knew the truth. The fire was where I burned the wedding invitations. They say revenge doesn't bring peace. They're right. It brings clarity. When the smoke cleared, and the headlines faded, I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt clean. Sarah Morgan. Once the woman I trusted with my soul, now the disgraced face of a corporate coup gone wrong. Her bar license was suspended. Her name was wiped from firm history. She lives somewhere off the grid now, last I heard. No LinkedIn. No firm. No glow up. Just silence. Ezra. He pleaded down to corporate fraud and identity theft. 2 years minimum, with 5 more under scrutiny. He tried to write me a letter. Said he was misguided. I never opened it. Carter. He's gone. Packed up overnight. Some whisper he's in Dubai, working with offshore funds. But in this world, ghosts don't come back unless you call them. And me? I stayed quiet. I rebuilt it. Rebranded the firm. Bought back every share that slipped away. Promoted people who never smiled in my face while sharpening their knives behind my back. But I made one final move. I renamed the holding company, Ashmark Group. Why? Because it's the scar that stays after the burn. There's one moment I replay more than any other. The last time I saw Sarah, in the boardroom, right after the recordings ended. Everyone was still frozen. Silent. The illusion shattered. She looked at me. For a second, there was no rage. No fear. Just recognition. She finally saw what I was beneath the surface. Not the man she fooled. But the one who let her try. I walked out without a word. And I never looked back. But here's the truth. I didn't do all this just for revenge. This wasn't about heartbreak. Or betrayal. Or even justice. This was about setting a trap so perfect, others would step into it. Because Sarah and Ezra? They were just the first. You see, in my world, betrayal isn't rare. It's standard practice. And I've learned that those who try to play king, usually forget the board was built by someone else. Me. If you think this betrayal was savage, wait until you meet the one that ended in blood. Backhand index pointing right, tap subscribe and turn on notifications, you do not want to miss what's coming. Speech balloon, drop a comment. Whose betrayal cut deeper, Sarah's, or Ezra's? Detective, and remember. Not every villain wears a mask. Some wear wedding rings. Bell, subscribe, thumbs up, like, repeat button, share, speech balloon, comment.